Much is made of Oswald's trip to Mexico. Little is made of the alias he used, John White. During the trip to Mexico 2 months before the assassination, Lee Oswald, or someone impersonating him, visited Cuernavaca, 87 kilometers south of Mexico City. He met Honduran Luis Fernandez Gonzalez, a member of the National Liberation Movement, in front of the Hotel Reforma on September 28th. This is from Commission Exhibit Document 121. He introduced himself to Gonzalez as John White. The next day, Fernandez joined John White and Saul Lopez, press chief of the National Liberation Movement in Mexico, on a trip to Cuernavaca, spending the day at the Casino de la Selva, a resort from a bygone era that used to entertain the likes of Al Capone and Bugsy Siegel before the hotel's casino was shut down. In the 1960s, however, it was mainly known as the leading nightclub in Cuernavaca. The FBI noted that Sam Giancana frequented it when he lived at nearby Rancho Tetela. The post-war period saw an influx of Americans settle in Mexico, particularly its capital city and the southern tropical resort town, Cuernavaca. These people of wealth and influence were the opposite of expatriates. Dr. Bruce Vickers was one of these American businessmen. Vickers was an advisor to the mayor of Cuernavaca, executive president of its Citizens Committee, and in 1968 assumed the enviable role of president of the National Association of Committees of Sister Cities. Vickers, although ostensibly a leading member of the American community in Cuernavaca, is a highly questionable character, having passed himself off as a medical doctor, ambassador of Togoland, and as, quote, Sir Bruce Vickers. Vickers was born Boris Viktorov in Riga, Latvia in 1908. He married Boston resident Lilia Sussman. Lillian was a secretary to Clark University President Wallace W. Atwood. His son, Roland Atwood, worked in the State Department's Bureau of Inter-American Affairs and later Chief of Special Operations at the Inter-American Development Bank. Vickers developed a reputation of being an American high up in communist circles, a probable confidant to the avowed Marxist Vicente Lombardo Toledano, and Vickers was the Mexico representative for a newly created private firm out of the conservative American Federation of Labor, the Inter-American Construction Corporation, IACC. Ostensibly formed to assist Juan Perón's dictatorship in Argentina with his 5-year plan, Perón paid the envoy 1.1 million for, quote, engineering services. IACC was not above using paramilitary brigades to shut up Argentine unions and labor organizers, such as shooting workers in the head for arguing about wages. Bruce Vickers was a resident, one of its chief residents, according to the FBI, of Cuernavaca's elite palatial subdivision, Rancho Tetela, an enclave of antebellum mansion owned almost exclusively by Americans, particularly Texans. The sprawling property was originally the estate of Harry E. Stewart of Dallas, owner of a highly successful farm machinery import-export business, patriarch to a respected influential Dallas family, and member of the oldest Masonic lodge in Texas, Holland Lodge Number 1. At one time, Stewart owned the Dallas Stoneleigh Hotel until he sold it to Leo F. Corgan in 1943. Stewart married his future ex-wife there in 1935. She was Edith Little Lewis, whom the FBI later characterized as, quote, very astute and distrustful and much feared by her servants. Stewart died in 1961, and Edith then assumed management of the Rancho Tetela property. Edith's registration at the U.S. Embassy cited Dallas banker Fred Florence as a reference. A prominent member of the Dallas community, president of Temple Emmanuel, and one of the first members of the Dallas Citizens Council, Florence headed the parent company of the Republic National Bank of Dallas, exposed in 1967 by the Washington Post's Richard Harwood as a conduit for CIA funds since the late 1950s, mainly the Howard Corp, a shell company created by Florence. According to Russ Baker, Florence was a member of the Texas Crusade for Freedom, joining Dallas Mayor Earl Campbell, D.H. Byrd, Ted Dealey, H.L. Hunt, Clint Murchison, and Bernard Gold, owner of Nardis Sportswear, which employed both Abraham Zapruder and Mrs. George de Mohrenschildt. In 1956, Florence was appointed chairman of the People to People Program Banking Committee by President Eisenhower. Similarly, Edith represented Texas Governor Beaufort Jester's Good Neighbor Commission as envoy to Mexico in 1948. Later that year, the commission orchestrated a 10-day visit throughout Texas of Mexican debutantes, which included the daughters of the British and Chinese ambassadors to Mexico. Edith oversaw the Get Acquainted tour. They were entertained by Mr. and Mrs. D.H. Bird. Travel accommodations were private planes owned by Bird, Benson Brothers of McAllen, Renoir Oil Company, Clint Murchison of Dallas, and Pete Cofield of Rockdale. When the Lee Oswald figure purchased a tourist card for entry into Mexico on September 17, 1963, the previous tourist card issued the same day was to William Gaudet, and one who had seen Oswald together with Bannister and Ferry in New Orleans. On the surface, this suggests that Oswald and Gaudet obtained their tourist cards together. However, there is another dimension: Gaudet's association with Nelson Rockefeller's Inter-American Affairs. Gaudet claimed his publications, the Latin American Newsletter and the Latin America Report, were of great value to Inter-American affairs. Gaudet told researcher Bud Fensterwald in 1975 that he was a secret agent for Nelson Rockefeller in Latin America during World War II. Cuernavaca, Inter-American Affairs, and the Good Neighbor Commission is an intriguing triangle of espionage, with Dealey Plaza on November 22nd in the middle. The Good Neighbor Commission of Texas was established by Coke Stevenson in 1943. Its origins come once again from Nelson Rockefeller's Inter-American Affairs. The who's who of Texas elite were tapped to lend their resources included oil magnate Neville Primrose. He owned property in Cuernavaca and was the father-in-law of CBS correspondent Bob Schieffer. H.H.P. Cofield, wealthy oil magnate with ties to Lyndon Johnson and deeply involved in the Texas prison system. Lloyd Benson Sr., senior colonel in the Texas State Reserve Corps, father of future Senator Lloyd Benson, D.H. Bird, and Clint W. Murchison. He also employed George de Mohrenschildt at Three States Oil and Gas Company. These same influential and powerful individuals also comprise the infamous Suite 8F group, in reference to a suite in Houston's Lamar Hotel. According to the Bureau's files, Edith and Bruce Vickers were the proprietors of Cuernavaca's Rancho Tetela by 1967. There, in a plush walled residence nicknamed San Cristobal, Chicago mobster Sam Giancana lived out a good portion of his Mexican seclusion period. In 1966, to avoid testifying before a grand jury, Giancana fled Chicago. It was an open secret among Rancho Tetela residents that Giancana, alias Richard Scalzetti, alias Sam De Palma, made his home there, although Edith and Bruce denied knowing the identity of the occupant. Giancana's stay in Rancho Tetela kept the FBI at bay for nearly a decade. It also enabled Giancana to do business beyond his Chicago interests. Like Trafficante, Giancana was interested in mining the lucrative black market possibilities of Central America. The sheer number of elite and successful Texas businessmen and socialite women shuttling back and forth to Dallas from Cuernavaca has gone totally unexplored. While Sam Giancana is a favorite suspect in the mafia conspiracy theory and the JFK assassination, his presence in Rancho Tetela speaks volumes about the veil of secrecy that surrounded that enclave, its compounds, de facto safe houses for those who could afford them. Finally, Cuernavaca functioned as a refuge for anything from the psychedelic community to the de-Yankeeification mission school of controversial ex-Catholic priest Ivan Illich. Ostensibly, Leary counted among his friends Mary Pinchot Meyer, former wife of CIA agent Cord Meyer Jr. A Harvard lecturer in psychology, Leary recounted in his 1983 autobiography Flashbacks how he first met Mary Pinchot Meyer in spring 1962. I'm Mary Pinchot. I've come from Washington to discuss something very important. I want to learn how to run an LSD session. Leary goes on to detail the conversation that followed that evening after Pinchot helped make dinner for Leary's kids. The adults then took a low dose of mushrooms and chatted around the fire. You don't really understand what's happening in Washington with drugs, do you? We've heard some rumors about the military, Leary said. It's time you learn more. The guys who run things, I mean, the guys who really run things in Washington, are very interested in psychology and drugs in particular. These people play hardball, Timothy. They want to use drugs for warfare, for espionage, for brainwashing, for control. Yes, I said, we've heard about that. But there are people like me who want to use drugs for peace, not war, to make people's lives better. Will you help us? How? I told you. Teach us how to run sessions, use drugs to do good. According to Peter Jennings in that 2016 book, Mary's Mosaic, Mary Pinchot Meyer was involved in a serious affair with President Kennedy. 2 days shy of her 44th birthday, on the cool morning of October 12, 1964, Pinchot was walking along the Chesapeake and Ohio towpath, a path Meyer often walked with Jackie Kennedy, when she was shot twice, once in the back and once in the head. Her murderer was never found.